My name is Clara Whitmore, a 47-year-old woman who had always been the family's quiet success. I wasn't flashy or loud about my achievements, but I had worked hard to build my career, buy my own home, and live comfortably. My sister Elaine, on the other hand, had always struggled with jealousy. She married young, had 2 kids, and often compared her life to mine in ways that made me uncomfortable. Still, I loved my family and invited them over every year to celebrate my birthday. A simple dinner, laughter, and homemade cake. This year, however, something felt different. Elaine had been acting distant for weeks. When I called to confirm the dinner, her tone was cold, almost forced. "Oh, sure, we'll come. Brianna's been dying to see your house again," she said with a laugh that didn't reach her voice. Brianna, her 19-year-old daughter, had inherited her mother's sharp tongue and her habit of competing with everyone around her. When they arrived that evening, I noticed how Brianna strutted in wearing a glittering silver dress that screamed attention. "Happy birthday, Aunt Clara," she said with a smirk, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. "Nice outfit. Very vintage." She emphasized the last word like a jab. I forced a smile, ignoring the insult. "Thank you, Brianna. You look sparkly." Dinner was tense. My sister kept making small digs about my single life, my quiet house, and how I must be so lonely without kids. I brushed it off, reminding myself that family drama wasn't worth ruining my birthday. But then came dessert. As I stood to cut my cake, Brianna accidentally bumped into me, spilling her bright red cranberry drink all over my cream-colored dress. Gasps filled the room. The liquid soaked through the fabric like blood. Brianna didn't even apologize. Instead, she laughed, loud, cruel, and deliberate. "Now you look so cheap," she sneered, her voice dripping with mockery. The room went silent. Elaine didn't scold her daughter. She just watched, lips twitching like she was suppressing a smile. My hands trembled. I could feel every eye on me, the humiliation burning through my chest. I forced a shaky laugh and said, "Accidents happen," before excusing myself to the bathroom. But inside, as I stared at my reflection, my ruined dress, my watery eyes, something inside me snapped. This wasn't an accident. This was an attack. And I promised myself this birthday would be the last time they'd ever laugh at me again. I stared at myself in the mirror, the red stains spreading across my dress like a slow, moving wound. My hands clenched at my sides. My birthday, my day, turned into a mockery in front of everyone I loved. For years, I had swallowed their snide remarks, their patronizing pity, and their whispered comparisons. But this time, something inside me hardened. When I came out of the bathroom, I had already fixed my expression. My tears were gone, replaced by a calm, polite smile, the kind of smile that hides a storm. "Don't worry, everyone," I said softly. "It's just a dress." My voice was steady, almost soothing. Elaine relaxed, perhaps thinking I'd moved on. Brianna rolled her eyes, muttering something under her breath about drama queens. The rest of the night continued awkwardly, filled with half-hearted laughter and clinking glasses. I played along, pretending nothing had happened. I even hugged Brianna when they left, a gesture that made her look at me in confusion. But behind that hug was a promise. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop replaying that moment in my mind. Her smirk, her mother's silent approval. The humiliation, the cruelty. I realized something bitterly true. My sister and her daughter saw me as a target, not family. I had spent years helping Elaine financially when her husband lost his job. I'd paid part of Brianna's tuition when they couldn't afford it. I'd been their safety net. And they had repaid me with ridicule. So I decided I wouldn't confront them in anger. No. That would be too easy for them. Instead, I would take a quieter route, a poetic one. First, I invited them to my home again. This time, for a special family dinner, to make up for my ruined birthday. Elaine seemed surprised but intrigued. "You sure you're not mad, Clara?" she asked over the phone. I smiled to myself. Of course not, Elaine. Family sticks together. What they didn't know was that I had already begun setting the stage for something unforgettable. I cleaned my home meticulously, rearranged the dining room, and placed a sleek white envelope in plain sight on the table. Inside it was the deed to my house, rewritten in a way that would make their jaws drop. You see, while they thought of me as a fragile woman desperate for their approval, I had something they didn't: control, intelligence, and financial power. The plan wasn't to humiliate them like they did me. It was to educate them, to make them understand the weight of cruelty and the cost of taking someone's kindness for weakness. As I watched the evening sky darken outside my window, I whispered to myself, "Let's see how cheap I look after tonight." The night of the dinner arrived with a strange sense of electricity in the air. My house glowed warmly under the soft amber lights, the table elegantly set with fine china, crystal glasses, and a bouquet of ivory roses at the center. Everything looked peaceful, graceful even. But beneath that calm shimmered the quiet pulse of revenge. Elaine and Brianna arrived exactly at 7, dressed to impress. Elaine wore her usual fox, polished charm, a diamond necklace I'd helped her pay for, and a smile as sharp as broken glass. Brianna strutted in wearing a tight red dress and far too much perfume, scrolling through her phone as if my home were beneath her notice. "Wow, Aunt Clara," she said mockingly, looking around. "You really went all out. Trying to make up for that little incident, huh?" I met her gaze with a serene smile. "Something like that, sweetheart." Dinner began pleasantly enough. The smell of roasted garlic and herbs filled the air, and the clinking of cutlery masked the tension that simmered between us. I watched them as they talked. Or rather, as they boasted. Elaine went on about a potential business investment that didn't exist, while Brianna bragged about her new designer bag. Neither of them asked how I'd been. Not once. Finally, after dessert, I stood up and quietly said, "I have something important to share." They both looked at me curiously. I reached for the white envelope sitting in the center of the table. The one that had been waiting all evening. My hand trembled just slightly, but my voice was calm as a whisper. "I've been thinking a lot about family lately," I began. "About generosity, gratitude, and respect." Elaine frowned slightly, sensing a shift. "Clara, what is this?" I opened the envelope and slid 2 documents across the table. "This," I said, "is the deed to my house. I've decided to make some changes." Brianna's eyes widened, then narrowed in suspicion. "You're giving away your house?" "Not exactly," I replied, sipping my wine. "I've transferred ownership to the one person in this family who truly deserves it." Elaine leaned forward, a flicker of greed lighting up her face. "Oh, Clara, that's so generous of you!" "You didn't have to," I interrupted gently. "It's not you, Elaine." The silence that followed was delicious. I continued. "Last month, after that birthday incident, I started thinking about how little appreciation I've received for everything I've done. I realized I've been investing my time, money, and love in the wrong people." Elaine's expression stiffened. "What are you talking about?" I stood, my voice now laced with steel. "Do you know who helped me when I fell sick last winter? Who brought me groceries, checked in every day, and made sure I was okay? It wasn't you. It wasn't Brianna. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Evans. A woman I barely knew. So I've decided to leave everything to her." The color drained from Elaine's face. Brianna slammed her hand on the table. "You're joking?" I tilted my head, smiling faintly. "Do I look like I'm joking, dear?" The room fell silent again, heavy and tense. The only sound was the slow ticking of the clock on the wall. Elaine tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. "Clara, this isn't fair. We're your family." I looked her straight in the eye and said softly, "Family doesn't humiliate you and call you cheap on your birthday. Family doesn't take your kindness and turn it into mockery." Brianna's lips trembled, but she stayed silent. I picked up my glass, raised it slightly, and said, "To lessons learned." The clink of crystal echoed through the quiet house. Sharp, final, and satisfying. Elaine sat frozen for several seconds before forcing out a shaky laugh. The kind of laugh people use when they're trying to disguise sheer panic. "Oh, Come on, Clara, she said, her voice trembling slightly. You're not really giving your house away to some random neighbor. You've always been dramatic, but this is ridiculous. Brianna crossed her arms and muttered under her breath, "She's lost it." I leaned back in my chair, studying them both. Their reactions didn't surprise me. Denial was always their first defense. "It's already done," I said calmly. "Signed, notarized, and legally filed." Elaine's perfectly composed face cracked for the first time. "Why would you do something so cruel? After everything we've been through as family?" I arched an eyebrow. "Cruel?" I asked. "Elaine, do you remember last Thanksgiving? When you made me sit at the end of the table, because you said my cheap shoes didn't match your decor theme? Or Brianna's graduation, when I gave her my late mother's pearl earrings, and she sold them online the next day?" Elaine's lips pressed into a thin line. "We were under stress," she said quickly. "You know how family tensions can be." "Stress," I repeated softly, "doesn't excuse cruelty." The silence between us grew heavier, thick with the weight of years of unspoken resentment. Then Elaine's expression shifted. I recognized it instantly. The same manipulative mask she'd used countless times before. Her voice softened, her tone suddenly dripping with false affection. "Clara," she said sweetly, "you know we didn't mean any harm. We've all made mistakes. Let's just move past this, okay?" She reached across the table, taking my hand as if she were some wounded angel seeking forgiveness. But I'd known Elaine too long. Her fingers felt cold. Her smile, rehearsed. "Move past this," I said slowly, removing my hand from hers. "You mean, pretend it never happened? Like you pretended to care when you borrowed money for your business venture and never paid me back?" Elaine's eyes flashed. "You think you're so perfect, Clara," she snapped. "You always act like some saint who does everything right. But you love holding things over people's heads, don't you? That's your way of feeling superior." Brianna smirked, chiming in, "Wes, it's easier to buy respect when you can't earn it." For a brief moment, the words stung. They were venomous, precise. But I didn't flinch. Instead, I let the silence do the talking. I looked from one to the other, then said quietly, "You both just proved my point." Elaine's fake smile faltered. "What do you mean?" I stood up and walked to the side cabinet, pulling out another envelope. "You see," I continued, "this dinner wasn't just about the house. It was about truth." I placed the second envelope on the table. "In there," I said, "is every record of the money I loaned you. Elaine, the $10,000 you told me was for medical bills, but spent on a trip to Italy instead. And you, Brianna, I found the listing where you sold my mother's pearls. You even left the family engraving in the description." Brianna's face went white. You went through my stuff?" "No," I said simply. "I went through my memories. I just finally stopped ignoring what was right in front of me." Elaine's composure shattered completely. "So what? You're going to ruin us over this. You'll regret it when you're old and alone." "Clara!" I took a deep breath, my voice steady and low. "No, Elaine. I regret waiting this long to stand up for myself." I turned toward the doorway, my heels echoing against the marble floor. Then I paused and glanced back at them. "You both came here tonight thinking I'd feed you and flatter you. But I invited you to watch the end of the game you've been playing for years." And with that, I left the dining room, leaving them sitting there, surrounded by untouched dessert and the heavy silence of their own guilt. Behind me, I could hear Elaine's voice, furious, trembling, calling after me. But for the first time in years, I didn't look back. The next morning, I woke up to a dozen missed calls and over 20 text messages. Most were from Elaine, filled with her usual mixture of guilt, tripping, and self-pity. "You've humiliated us in front of everyone. How could you air family business like that? Mom would be ashamed of you, Clara." I didn't respond. Not one word. I made coffee, fed my cat, and sat by the window as the sunlight crept over the garden. The same garden I used to tend for Elaine's parties. I had spent years maintaining her image of the perfect family, while she quietly dismantled mine. But not anymore. That afternoon, I got a knock on the door. It was Mr. Thompson, my lawyer, holding a folder with a faint smile. "It's done," he said. "The title transfer is official. They can't contest it, even if they try." "Good," I said, exhaling for what felt like the first time in years. He hesitated before speaking again. "You really think they'll let this go quietly?" I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that came from somewhere deep and calm. "I'm counting on the fact that they won't." 2 days later, I went to the local grocery store. As I turned down the aisle, whispers followed me like shadows. Apparently, Elaine had been busy. She told anyone who would listen that I had gone senile and was being manipulated by a neighbor con artist. Her performance must have been impressive. Tears, trembling lips, the whole show. But gossip travels both ways. By the next week, someone had leaked the story about her business trip to Italy, paid for with money meant for my medical bills. Screenshots of her Instagram vacation selfies started circulating. Suddenly, her crocodile tears dried up. Brianna, on the other hand, decided to fight back online. She made a public post calling me toxic and vindictive, saying I'd destroyed her trust in family. It went viral, for all the wrong reasons. Someone found her jewelry shop listing, with the pearl earrings I'd given her still visible under her old username. The comments section tore her apart. "You sold your grandma's pearls. Shameful. Greedy much. No, we know who the real villain is." I didn't need to say a thing. Their own actions did the talking. A week later, Elaine showed up at my house. She didn't knock, she barged in, wild-eyed and red-faced. "You've ruined me," she screamed. "Do you have any idea what people are saying? I can't even show my face at the country club." I stayed seated, calm as ever. "Maybe you should have thought of that before turning your daughter against me." She stepped closer, her voice cracking. "You've always been jealous of me. Admit it. You never had the charm, the looks, the husband, the decency." I interrupted softly. That shut her up. "You always said family is everything, Elaine," I continued. "But you only said it when you wanted something. The moment family meant responsibility, you ran." Her lip quivered. "You'll regret this, Clara." I stood, looked her dead in the eyes, and said, "No, Elaine. For the first time in my life, I don't regret a thing." She left in silence. Later that night, I sat on my porch, the cool air brushing my face. I thought about the years I'd spent walking on eggshells around people who never respected me, and how freeing it felt to finally walk barefoot through my own truth. My phone buzzed. A message from Brianna. "Grandma, I didn't know you saw that listing." "I'm sorry, I really am." I read it twice, then typed back. "Apologies mean nothing without change, Brianna. Show me who you are, not who your mother taught you to be." Then I put my phone down and watched the stars. For the first time, the world didn't feel small or lonely. It felt honest. And that was more than enough. 2 months passed. I hadn't heard from Elaine again. No surprise there. She was probably licking her wounds somewhere, nursing her pride and spinning a new story to make herself the victim. But Brianna, she surprised me. One chilly Saturday morning, as I was pruning the hydrangeas, I heard the creak of the front gate. When I looked up, there she was. My granddaughter. Standing awkwardly with a paper bag in her hands. Her makeup was gone, her hair tied back, her expression softer than I'd ever seen it. "Hi, Grandma," she said quietly. "Can we talk?" I hesitated. The old me would have said yes immediately, eager to fix things, desperate to keep peace. But the woman standing in my garden that morning was no longer desperate. She was deliberate. I nodded toward the porch. "You can talk?" I said. "Whether I listen depends on what you have to say." Brianna exhaled shakily and sat down. From the bag, she pulled out a small jewelry box. The same one that had once held my pearl earrings. "I bought them back," she said, her voice trembling. "It took a while, but I found the buyer. I wanted to return them." I stared at the box for a long time, my chest tightening. Not from anger, from something closer to sadness mixed with pride. Why? I finally asked. She looked at me, tears glistening. Because you were right. I was acting like mom. I thought money and image meant everything. And I hurt you just to impress people who didn't even care about me. Silence hung between us, broken only by the sound of the wind chimes. I don't expect you to forgive me, she continued. But I wanted to say I'm sorry, and that I miss you. I took a deep breath and reached across the table, gently pushing the box back toward her. Keep them. Her eyes widened. What? Those pearls aren't worth much in money, I said. But they are now worth your honesty. Wear them as a reminder of what you almost lost, and what you chose to rebuild. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Thank you, Grandma." A week later, Brianna started visiting every Sunday. Sometimes she helped me cook. Sometimes we just talked about her work, her friends, and how she was trying to be better. Elaine, of course, didn't approve. She called one evening, furious that her daughter was taking sides. "You're poisoning her against me," she shouted. "No, Elaine," I replied calmly. "You did that all by yourself." Then I hung up. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel guilty about choosing peace over people. Months rolled by, and as spring bloomed, so did something I thought I'd lost forever. Family, the kind that grows from truth, not control. One afternoon, Brianna brought over an envelope. Inside was a letter written in her handwriting. "Dear Grandma, you taught me that love without respect isn't love at all. You showed me that silence can speak louder than anger. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I deserved it. Love, Brianna." I folded the letter and smiled. The pearls glistened faintly on her ears as she hugged me goodbye. As I watched her leave, I whispered to myself, maybe second chances don't come from forgetting, but from finally understanding. That night, I sat by the fire, holding a cup of tea, the flames dancing in the reflection of my window. My home, my peace finally felt mine. And for the first time in my long life, I realized something simple, yet powerful. You can lose everything. Money, trust, even blood. But if you stand up for your worth, you never truly lose yourself. Because sometimes, walking away isn't cruel. It's the first step toward healing.